Welcome into America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates. Securities offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Advisory services offered through the Retirement Guys Formula, registered investment advisor. America's Retirement Headquarters, America's Medicare Associates, and the Retirement Guys Formula are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Welcome into, and thanks so much for joining us here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula, America's Medicare Associates, and Retirement Tax Partners with Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner. 419-794-3030 is the phone number. So again, it's 419-794-3030. You can also find out more about the team. Set up a time to speak with them at the website. That is arhq.com. My name is Chris Swan. Today on the show, how to find out if someone is qualified to give financial advice, how to know when you can retire, and ways to avoid fees in retirement. All of this and more. But first, before we dive into any of it, let me check in with the guys. Nolan, Scott, glad to be with you. How you doing today?
That's great. Good to be here. You know, as my last weekend was the first weekend not having high school hockey, so it was kind of interesting. I found myself actually watching hockey.
Sure.
Toledo Walleyes and, the Detroit Red Wings last weekend. Had the comfort of watching it from home and just enjoying kind of a free weekend. Excited in the fact that my son Carter has an opportunity to go out and try out for the Tampa Bay juniors team. So opportunity maybe after high school to continue on his career path. And I think this time of year, Tampa sounds pretty darn good.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Although last week we had some pretty decent weather. You know, I think it got into the 50s a day or two there. But, I feel your incitement and your pain, which you're not feeling yet. But, when my daughter was playing softball, that's your life for so long. And you make friends, the travel sports is like really, really fun because you get to go out of town and hang with a lot of friends. But unfortunately, Nolan, that comes to a screeching halt. When my daughter graduated college, I'll never forget walking out on the field. She collected her diploma at second base on the field. And, you get home, and that next weekend, you sit around looking at each other like there's nothing we have to do. So now what happens? It's so exciting, but it's also, for me, it was very, very tough and depressing because I thoroughly enjoyed watching the kids. And I know you love watching Carter play hockey, and, best of luck to him in Tampa. I'm sure that if he makes a team, which I hope he will, you may be opening up an office down in Tampa for a few years.
I know my other son has already volunteered to go set up the Tampa office location.
Exactly.
So he would join his brother in a heartbeat.
Yes.
It's funny how that works. I remember when my dad in the Army was stationed in Hawaii, we had a lot of visitors come through, a lot of relatives and stuff. And then we were stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas for a little while, and then no one ever came. But just a weird thing. But we appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to spend with the listeners and the viewers. But let's go ahead and dive into this, because it's not just about getting to retirement or through retirement. Beyond retirement, obviously a major component, and that involves estate planning. There is a side to it called probate. And when it comes to estate planning, the word probate might as well have horns or have four letters to it. So let's clear up the misconceptions, perhaps. What is probate? What is potentially so terrible about it? And how do you help people avoid it?
Well, here at America's Retirement Headquarters, we have that retirement team action plan, and the team stands for not only do we have a team in place to be able to kind of help and implement all of these areas. For example, I'm not an attorney, but, we work with a couple of local professionals and have some online resources, but it stands for taxes, estate planning, asset protection, and money management. And in this segment, we're going to give you 4 ways that you can potentially avoid probate. So things that can help you out a lot. And there are going to be some easy solutions on ways that we can help you out. We had a client recently had come into the office. He's just getting ready to retire. We put together his retirement team action plan. This gentleman is not married and it does not have an estate plan in place. And by that, what I mean, he doesn't have a will, doesn't have power of attorney. But having no wife, we had talked to him a little bit about some of the potential issues that he could face, not just necessarily probate, identifying, the process of what do you want to have happen with your assets, but talking to him about, what happens if your incapacitated, you're hurt, somebody still needs to pay your rent payment. Somebody needs to manage your utilities, look at your investment accounts. And so we were able to walk him through some of the online services that are available that are out there. We were able to talk to him about some of the professionals and really be able to kind of show him a customized solution. And, by the time he left here, I think he was just so much more confident knowing that he got it checked off the list. So in my opinion, everybody, doesn't matter how big of your estate is, you need to have some form of an estate plan. And when we look at the process of probate really is that legal process, when the court hands over a deceased person assets to designated beneficiaries after debts and taxes are paid. A will really is a thing that goes through that probate process. I don't know how many people you talk to, Scott, on your health insurance side, but my wife, we recently went in. She had a little bit of surgery on her knee. We have a living will and we have a DNR, a do not resuscitate document that we've had in place, and we put that in place. Those are trying to explain and making sure that everybody knows in the event that something happens, what our wishes are. I don't know how many times did you run into people that maybe haven't done anything with their overall estate planning?
Oh, that's the norm, and sadly, it's the norm. There's so many people that sit and say, "Oh, that's something else we have to get off of our checklist of things to do." And then they'll ask, "Do you have that here?" And as you know, here at America's Retirement Headquarters, we can actually help and offer all types of services, and that is one of the things that we do. We've got attorneys that we can refer you to help you establish that. But one of the things you mentioned, Nolan, that is so important is you want to make sure you get things put in place while you're capable of doing so. The worst thing that can happen, the last thing you want to happen, is if you become incapacitated, you don't get to make the decisions anymore. And if you don't have somebody designated to make those decisions on your behalf, or if things aren't spelled out, you're at the mercy of the courts, the probate, right? So let me ask you this. Why is it so important to actually have a plan put in place? Because if I have a will, does the will still go through probate?
So a will goes through probate. So probate doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad process. Probate is the process that ultimately, again, goes through the court system. I think some of the challenges we'll cover, again, 4 ways to avoid probate. But some of the reasons why I think it's important to understand why it's good to have an estate plan in place, not only to try to avoid some of these fees and expenses that we're going to share with you, but ultimately having clear instructions that are out there.
Right.
I don't know, over the years, helping hundreds of families and working with retirees, I can confidently tell you that families that have a clear estate plan, that they've communicated what their wishes are to their loved ones, in those times of losing a loved one, that process tends to move a lot smoother than people who have old, outdated estate plans that have no estate plans in place, because I think there's confusion. I'm a perfect example. My dad got remarried on his second marriage, and unfortunately, just a couple of years into that marriage, at the age of 49, my dad had a heart attack and passed away. As a young kid at that time, I think I really struggled with, was that really the wishes Dad would have wanted? Because at 49, I don't really think that he or anybody had thought at 49 that something bad was going to happen. But we don't know when anything's going to happen. So, at any age, when you start to have assets, you want to have your estate plans put in place. You also want to think about updating your estate plans as things get older. Last week, I met with my estate planning attorney. I got my estate plans updated because when I last did it, my kids were little. And at that point, my kids weren't Boy Scouts, they weren't Eagle Scouts, they weren't graduates, they weren't in a spot where I feel that they're more responsible. So it was important for me to make sure that now they're a little bit older, people understand, what and how to manage the assets, God forbid, something happens. When we look at it, the probate process, it can be costly. I don't know if you've ran into people over the years, or even if you experienced it, when you lost your dad, but, the cost and the time delay, you get these bills from either the court system, attorneys, they can add up to be kind of a pretty big expense. And that's why I think avoiding probate's an important part for people that want to try to minimize that as well.
Yeah, I think the time delay is one of the bigger things, and the unknowns are the fees. A lot of people have no idea what the fees actually are involved, and they vary by state. I know that in California you can expect to pay probate costs of 4 to 7% in estate of the estate's value in fees alone. A lot of people don't have any idea. I will tell you this: I did not know that. The good thing for when Dad passed away was things were transferred over to Mom, and we were able to put things in place for her. And now we're pretty well set for when that unfortunate time happens. Mom actually turned 87 here a couple of weekends ago, and she's doing fantastic. But they're still at 87 years old. You just don't know. So the delay in getting things settled, because bills come in, whether you have the money or not, the bills are still going to be coming in. And, I think those are a couple of things that a lot of people aren't familiar with.
Well, you mentioned the word costly, and you talked about the actual cost of the probate to the court system. But again, now you add on top of that, you add in things like fees and expenses. I can think of an example where other things that come into play can be a bigger issue as well. I have one of our radio show listeners. She had come in quite a few years ago, so this is a flashback in the past, and she came up to the office because her mom had ended up in a nursing home, and so she was the only child. Her dad had already passed away, and she started to get this financial inventory put together because she knew with Mom's health condition it wasn't going to go very good, and noticed that she didn't really have her estate plans put in place. In fact, one of the things that she didn't have in place was a named beneficiary on her 401k plan. Wow. And so when Mom passed away, that 401k plan, not only did you have the probate expenses, not only did you have the attorney fees, you had the fact that income taxes weren't paid on those retirement accounts. And by not having a properly named beneficiary, it created a blow up. I can think of another example of a client who works with us. And, that particular client, we worked with his dad and we had plans in place. And ultimately we're able to help take and transition that account, make it more of a multi-generational retirement account. Sure. So he didn't have all those taxes blow up at once. So not only can it be less costly by planning ahead, it can also save fees and expenses. So here are 4 ways that can help you avoid probate. Number 1 is you want to look at having named beneficiaries. And when you're thinking about named beneficiaries, you're thinking about your 401k, your individual retirement account, your life insurance policy, your annuities, things that you can name a beneficiary. It's important to have a primary and a contingent beneficiary in place. There's other cases, like in Mom's situation, where there's different type of titling that you can have done on either investment accounts or deeds. So those are called transfer on death, and I don't know if you've looked into any of those type of options.
We have that in place, actually.
So number 2 is a transfer on death registration. Those are things that are title assets. It can be for somebody that has a house. It could be, for somebody who has an investment account. Having a named beneficiary or a transfer on death registration could be another way to avoid probate. Number 3 is you can create what is a living trust. So I, as an example, I have a living trust. That was the one I was talking about that can, help with my children. God forbid something happens to my wife and I at the same time. But the other thing I like about a trust is it keeps my information private.
Sure.
I don't know if you know this or not, but a will's public information. Mm-hmm. You could go on the internet right now and you could type in Elvis Presley's will or Marilyn Monroe's will. And Scott, if you have some free time to do that, I'd encourage you to do that because it's pretty fun reading some of the wills of some of the famous celebrities that are out there.
To try to get into their mindset at the time, it's when they were creating the will, what were they thinking about, right? Because when you read some of these things, I bet there's some pretty crazy stuff out there.
It is crazy stuff, but I think, for most of us average everyday folks, we don't want our information private. And so probate, becomes a public process. Creating a living trust can be a way to avoid probate and a way to keep your information private. Number 4 is if you are a small business owner, don't forget about your business can be, one of the biggest assets that you own. And there most likely is a tremendous amount of value in what your business has. Even after you pass away, as long as you have the proper operating agreements and succession plan in place for your business, another way to avoid probate. So the bottom line here is there's 4 ways to avoid probate. If you have an estate plan that is outdated, you need to get it in place, or need to just have it reviewed to say what's available. It's exactly what we can do as part of that retirement team action plan. And Chris, you know what's great about that is when you come into the office, or one of the first 5 callers that has more than $250,000 saved for retirement time comes into the office, that meeting's going to be complimentary. So whether we're going through that ultimate estate planning checklist or providing them that retirement team action plan, they're then going to be able to get a second set of eyes that can give them some advice on what maybe they can do to get their estate plans updated to avoid probate. And then if and when we need to pull in an attorney and or provide recommendations on how to get things done, that's the team approach that we do here at America's Retirement Headquarters.
As they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and preparing for, estate planning and the ultimate estate planning checklist can prevent a lot of headaches and heartaches down the line. So give a call and set up a time to speak with the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030. That's 419-794-3030. You can also find out more about them and set up a time on the website. That is, of course, arhq.com. Ray Dalio is the CEO of the investment firm Bridgewater. He was recently speaking with Yahoo Finance about our national debt. The interest is now $3 billion, with a B, dollars a day, which is why the Trump administration is so determined to get interest rates down.
Now, in the private markets, credit markets, we just talk about a death spiral. That part of the cycle when the debtor needs to borrow money in order to pay debt service, and it accelerates, and then everybody sees that and they don't want to hold the debt. That's where we're approaching. But there's also interest rates. The interest rate on the debt is very high. And so when you cut the supply, you improve the bond market. In other words, it performs better. You'll get a lower interest rate. And when you get a lower interest rate, that's good for markets, good for the stock market, good for the economy and so on, which brings in other taxes benefits.
Often here on the show and in the classes you guys do, you guys talk about threats and opportunities. And this certainly does seem like there are opportunities out there, but that means there are also threats. If the rates go down, it could hurt retirement savers. How are you guys going to help adjust for your clients if that happens?
Boy, Chris, that's great. I remember when back in 2014, when the Obamacare came out, and a lot of the advisors, looked at the doom and gloom. Oh my gosh, they're going to eliminate all of us. And it was the ones that succeeded that saw an opportunity. And I remember back at the beginning of the prior administration's term, when the interest rates started to increase, a lot of people were talking about the higher interest rates and how it was going to affect the credit card and the debt, that you carried as an individual. And I remember mentioning that this is an opportunity for any people out there that have a qualified high deductible health plan. You actually have the ability to open up and create HSA accounts. HSA accounts, it's a health savings account. They're a great mechanism, a great tool to put money aside, and it is 100% tax deductible. So you put this money in, it lowers your reportable taxable income. And with the interest rates going up, this was a tremendous opportunity to invest in these HSAs, earn some money, build your HSA accounts, because you can use that for any health approved benefit, a medically approved benefit. And you can even use that when you do, migrate over into Medicare. So I remember talking about moving a lot of money and putting money in, fully funding and investing into your HSA accounts. But Nolan, that's one aspect of it. But now that the rates may start to come down, that may not be the best investment now, because you're not going to be earning money on that money anymore.
Well, I think that's a big part of what retirees want to know for a cut in interest rates. And, when we take a look at it, personally, I think with the Trump administration's on the focus of lowering interest rates in light of this national debt crisis that we have, you're going to fall into either one of two camps, either somebody that's a saver or somebody that's a spender. So my son, as an example, he's looking to purchase maybe his first house, either get a house or a townhouse. In his case, he wants interest rates to be lower because the mortgage rates he would pay would be lower. He has some car loan, and the lower the rates, the better off he is. Hopefully he doesn't, but he might carry a little bit of credit card debt. I, on the other hand, I don't have a mortgage on my house. I have no car loan, and I pay off my credit cards every single month. I would rather have interest rates be higher, because by lowering interest rates, what it's going to do is it's going to hurt myself and our retirement savers with the impact that it has on where they get some of the fixed rates. There's a lot of people, though, that come in and then they're not taking advantage of where rates are. So the Federal Reserve and the administration has indicated their plan is to lower rates. Scott, there's people that come into the office, and I see all the time they have extremely large balances in checking and savings accounts.
Sure.
I had a gentleman that you were working with. You had come into our office. He's a small business owner. And like most small business owners, he had a large portion of money saved up as a backup to be able to run his business in case things happen. We looked at the interest of the large savings that he had, and I think he was getting paid 0.08% interest.
Sure.
But money markets accounts today, as of the date of this here, just heading into March of 2025, you can still have a money market rate that's as high as 4%, instantly being able to catapult where those rates are as well. This is an area, Scott, that I say people should not get lazy about. People should make sure that they're working to make every dollar work as hard as possible. There is a cost to liquidity. Just having that money set aside in your bank account, it might make you feel good, but there's a cost associated with having that much liquidity, especially if interest rates go down in the future.
So for somebody like that, you take a large sum of money that, and I know who you're talking about because he told me, he says, I have a lot of money sitting in this savings account, and I know I should be investing it differently. He just come right out and told me that. So no, let me ask this. So if you took a large sum of that money, moved it into an account of some sort that's going to earn 4 point whatever percent, at what point do you look at, okay, maybe I should pull back? Or do you really even need to pull back if it drops to zero?
Well, you got to really look again at the cost of liquidity. And now is the time you really want to take advantage of where these interest rates are at. I mean, they're close to the highest they've been, right? They've come down just a little bit, but they're really the highest they've been since my children have been born. So when interest rates go down, what's going to happen is you're going to have lower rates on new bonds that come out. You're going to have lower rates on CDs. You're going to have lower rates on fixed annuities. When you get lower rates and you're at retirement time and you're living off of that income, when rates go down, it could force you as a retiree to take on more risk than what you're comfortable with, because you have to try to get maybe a higher yield on your bond. Well, if you're going to get a higher yield on your bond, what it means is you could be repositioning your bonds from higher credit quality bonds to lower credit quality bonds. They're referred to as maybe high yield or junk bonds, and those junk bonds have to pay out a higher yield because they don't have the same quality. So that could increase your risk, because what happens if we go into a recession? You may think that, well, I better get back into the stock market because I have to have more growth to offset that. With the market at or close to record highs, you're going to be taking on more risk. So long term, it can hurt your ability to keep up with inflation and potentially higher taxes. A couple of things that you can do. We call it the independent income system. And what that is that is building out a laddered approach. Within a laddered approach, what we're going to do is we're going to look at taking and making sure you have enough money that's liquid available in emergency accounts. There was another couple that you had recently come in. He's getting ready to retire from our school system, had a big bucket of money that they were setting aside just as a rainy day fund. We can reposition a portion of that rainy day fund, and if they have an emergency, they have the ability where they can access that money anytime that they want, but shifting it from their almost zero interest bank savings to a high interest money market account immediately puts more money back into their pocket. The next thing that we could do is we can lock in rates anywhere from 1 to 3 years, and using FDIC insured CDs, if rates go down and they have that rate locked in, it can be a rate that's then protected for the next couple of years. And if they don't need it, maybe they're not going to buy a car for a couple of years, another great thing to do. with Insurance Companies of America, we can lock in interest rates for as long as 10 years. Some people just want to set it and forget it and lock in the higher interest that's available today. So a lot of great choices and options. But for retirees living off of their income, if you're within 5 years of retirement time or you're already in retirement time, with interest rates already happening and more coming, now is the time that you want to have us look at your fixed income part of your portfolio and maybe consider, how do we lock in higher rates for a longer period of time and not get stuck with lower rates as if and when the Federal Reserve and the Trump administration gets the ability to try to lower interest rates. That can be done in putting together that independent portfolio analysis and looking at your situation. Just one of the things that we do in that retirement team action plan.
You can find out more about the Retirement Team Action Plan and the Independent Income System on the website, arhq.com. You can also set up a time to speak with them, start developing your own Retirement Team Action Plan as it pertains to you, because at the end of the day, what's more important than your personal circumstances? 419-794-3030 is the phone number. Again, the website, arhq.com. Also, check out the events tab over there. Find out more about the Economic Summit, all kinds of events they have going on. They'd love to have you out there. And if you can't make those, you want to sit down with them, you can reach out right there. And one more time, the number, 419-794-3030. As always, we want to thank you for joining us here on America's Retirement Headquarters. It is the home of the Retirement Guys formula and America's Medicare Associates and Retirement Tax Partners. Hope you have a great day ahead of you. Thanks for taking the time. Gentlemen, appreciate the time as always. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with the final word.
Well, Scott, I just want to tell you and your family have a great time on vacation. I know you're going to get some warm weather here. For the rest of us here in Northwest Ohio, March is here. Warm weather is coming. And in the meantime, just remember, when you think retirement, think America's Retirement Headquarters. It's one location for your entire retirement. We'll be back next week, same time, here on Toledo's largest talk station, 1370 WSPD. And also available on all of your favorite podcasts that are available out there. Just type in America's Retirement Headquarters for more great information on how to retire.
America's Retirement Headquarters is located at 1700 Woodlands Drive in Maumee, Ohio. You can reach them by calling 419-794-3030 or online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Investments can fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Nolan Baker is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult with your attorney, accountant, and or tax advisor for advice concerning your particular circumstance. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Nolan Baker, Ohio Insurance License Number 27787.